we are not, there's a saying in the Viking community, a Viking bows to no one.
Okay.
So this is not a situation of servitude. This is a situation of partnership and honor and mutual respect.
Hello, and welcome to our program, Growing in the Old Ways. All of the opinions expressed on this show are those of the hosts or guests and do not necessarily express the views of Pagan Pathways Temple or its affiliates. This podcast is all about community voices. Today, we'll be chatting with Steven Dunne. Steven is an occult fiction fantasy writer who has been a practicing pagan since 1996. Steven is also a member of the Pagan Pathways Temple Clergy, where he serves as the Norse Practitioner, also known as the Norse Nurse, among the board. Steven's service, Norse Service, usually takes place on the first Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. He also teaches class with the Dunnes with yours truly. Steven has also presented at Convocation, the Detroit Conjure and Folk Magic Festival. However, his most important distinction, at least to me, is that he's my dear and loving husband for the past 5 years. And without further ado, it's Steven Dunne. Well, Steven, thank you so much for joining us on Growing in the Old Ways.
Well, I really appreciate you getting me in here on such short notice.
I know, right? So I introduced you. You are an occult fiction writer. Do you want to talk a little bit about your pieces and what they represent?
Yeah, sure. So my first long-form work of occult fiction was titled Carrion. It was written in 1997, but was not published until 2013.
I want to say 15.
Okay. Well, it was published considerably later than when it was written.
Yeah.
And there were a few edits in the meantime there, but the bulk of it was written in 1997. It is I like to refer to it as equal parts fiction and manifesto, although that word's a little bit charged. But it's kind of a philosophical treatise about my beliefs and understanding of the structure of the universe and how humans interact with spirit.
Okay, yeah, that
very vague.
Yeah.
But that's
that's I've read the work, so
without stepping on too much of the plot and giving anything away, for those who may wish to read a 87-page novella, just to get the idea of what I'm getting at. That's the there is no one-page beat sheet version of the story.
No, there is no elevator pitch for that particular story.
Correct. It's just it's weird. It's sometimes difficult to follow, not because it's written poorly, but because there is a tremendous shift in narrative throughout the course of the story. One reader even described it as unable to finish because it was too weird. So. I'll take it.
And we have that comment pinned to our wall somewhere.
I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saved the first rejection letter I ever got for that book when I was sending it away to quote unquote legit publishers before I self-published. And I still have that, and I also have the really bad review that I got because it was. I feel that says more about the reader than it does about the writer. But anywho. So yeah, that's what Carrion's about. It's I guess generalized plot. It's about a group of human-like entities that possess supernatural powers that are able to tap into this force known as the One, and in order to enact changes in the universe. But with as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. Not only are these creatures able to enact change in the universe, they are also responsible for maintenance of reality. Sound like anything we're familiar with?
Yeah.
Maybe the practice of magic.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's I feel that magical practitioners bear a great responsibility. I know there's a lot of folks who just are very fly-by-night who like to run in and kind of bubblegum their way through magic, but I do take it very seriously. Even in my irreverence, I do understand the weight of what magical practice, because a lot of folks, a problem pops up and their first immediate answer is magic it, but there are practical solutions.
Before you jump to magic, like maybe pay the bill.
Right. It's like maybe, yes, magic is helpful and it does bolster your practical existence, but at the same time, it shouldn't solve every problem for you, because there is, in my belief system, a consequence to that. And there's a buildup of or just things that you need to work off. And if you're fine, constantly being, read on the ledger, so to speak, then great. But if you want to kind of, ease things up a little bit, maybe only use Magick when you need to use Magick. But that's just my 2 cents.
Gotcha. Now, I'm probably at an advantage to the rest of the folks that listen to this podcast in that I've read all of your works.
Quite possible.
So, or at least I'm subliminally aware of them. Yeah. So why don't you tell the folks at home about your protagonist, Neil Hawthorne?
Yeah, so the series I am working on currently, it's right now 2 novels deep in what is projected to be 3 to 4 book series. It's about a chap by the name of Neil Hawthorne, who is a necromancer. Of course, this is much more in the fantasy realm of magic. This is not intended to be in any way indicative of how, magic functions in...
Well, you've described this book as pulp.
Yeah, it is pulp. It is very, at times, satirical, at times more... It's very tongue-in-cheek. Yeah. So the concept of the character is he's kind of a down on his luck, not very good at living. He is he's very very bad at being a human, but he is very talented in the magical arts. So he is the guy that is responsible for keeping up the walls of reality, again, common theme. Yeah. Against invasion from multidimensional creatures. So throughout the course of this, he ends up getting involved in all kinds of unsavory situations. Shenanigans. Yes. Has a traveling companion who is unconventional. Let's say that. So she's a little bit on the I don't even know a good word to describe her, saucy side, I guess.
Yeah, she's pretty cheeky.
Cheeky. There you go. So, but anyway, it's the basic plot of the first book is about how every year on the night of Samhain, Hawthorne fights the war against the... basically, he stops the end of the world every year.
Gotcha.
Okay. That's the job of the head sorcerer, is to stop the end of the world every year, which is my intention is to make it sound mundane. It's like, oh, geez, I got to stop the end of the world again. It's that time. It's every year. Got to do this. But
we talk about the holidays coming swinging at your head, but that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So that's the main plot. But throughout the course of it, it ends up progressing, and not going to give anything away, but there is a second book, so you can assume he probably is successful.
At least once.
Maybe
twice.
Maybe 3 times a lady. So
3 times a lady.
But yeah, the second book is more about a personal exploration of Neil's history, and kind of going back to his point of origin and undoing some wrongs that he has performed in the name of the greater good, but nonetheless he did a bad, and he's got to make penance for that.
All right. So when you started that story, I very clearly remember speaking to you about it, and there was a very specific inspiration for the character Neil Hawthorne, and I want to ask if you remember what that inspiration was initially.
I don't recall. I mean, he's loosely based on myself, just personality-wise.
There you go.
He's kind of a alternate universe what-if version of me. There was a very significant branching out that occurred in my life where I was going to move, or I had quasi-planned to move to New Orleans to pursue a life basically as a street musician. Just to try and make it as a musician one day. I I was playing bass very seriously at the time. I was in a couple bands, and I was like, you know what? Can I swear on this podcast? You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to New Orleans. Because that was a place that held great resonance with me. Of course, this was in 1995 when this would have happened. But,
so well before anything in the recent past.
Absolutely.
Before Katrina and such.
So, but in retrospect, it was pretty good that I didn't end up moving down there, because I would have been, most likely living on or near the quarter, and would have probably been washed away like many other people. But the other thing that is also fortunate is that I probably would have, I'm imagining I probably would not have had the fortitude to stick that course of life, and I probably would have ended up coming right back home anyway after a couple years.
That's true.
But things ended up as they were. I ended up going to MSU, and then everything else is the course of life.
Yeah. So tell me about your experiences as a pagan at MSU and what that was like back in the 90s.
Well, it was kind of like the Wild West in a lot of ways. Everything was very freewheeling, and there was no real organization as far as the now I say that with a slight grain of salt. There was no organization in the form of people. There wasn't a hierarchical organization. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha.
There were a number of organizations that were present on campus, and being college students, who are naturally just seeker-type people anyway, you run into all kinds of people who want to talk metaphysics, want to talk about, alternative religious practices. Back then, most of the people I ran into weren't so much focused on the religious aspect of magic or paganism. It was more like just practice of magic as a non-religious entity. Magic was its own thing, and I know a lot of people are like that even today about magic, where it's not necessarily tied to religious practice. It's just a thing that you do, and of course. My magical, roots were based in Crowleyan practices, kind of more Thalamic, Golden Dawn type stuff.
Right, so you're talking more high magics than magics.
Yeah, it's really weird too, because I got my start in, as you mentioned, in high magic, more ritual magics, but I also was a practitioner of shamanism at the time.
Oh,
so it's like I had that high-low combo thing going on, but it was...
The high-low combo.
It was very... and of course, we had a great New Age / pagan bookstore in one of the suburbs of Lansing called Okemos. That place, the Triple Goddess bookstore.
Yeah, you mentioned that place.
That was fantastic, and I've heard rumor that they're still in business in some way or other. And if you guys are, good on you. But last time I know the shop in Okemos closed up, and they had moved over off of Michigan Avenue in Lansing, and that was the last time I was there. And they were kind of sharing the space with 2 other stores, and it was very confusing. But I did end up going in there and bought some items, so hey, good for me as a consumer. But nonetheless,
yay capitalism, we did it.
That's where I picked up a majority of the books that I had read from when I was first starting out. But there was also an excellent bookstore on Grand River in East Lansing that I am drawing a blank on the name of.
It's that store with that thing.
Yeah, that store with the thing. It's like one of those places where you go in and you just randomly find a book that you weren't looking for, and then you end up leaving and you can't remember the name of the place, and then you go to look back and the place never existed. It's like that. It's like that, but except you're doing it for TV. Anyway, so that's, it'll come to me eventually, but it's...
It'll be at about 3 a.m.
Yeah,
I'll sit up and say... Done.
The aristocrats. So
yeah. So you talked a little bit about your influences, specifically Crowley.
Sure.
Were there other writers and other books that were inspirational to you at that time?
Well, there was, like I said, Magic in Theory and Practice by Aleister Crowley was huge. There was The Way of the Shaman by Michael Harner. That was a huge influence on me. There was a book called I can't remember the name of it. Never mind. It was a book.
What was it about?
It was about like a new age practice of what they were terming quantum voodoo.
Weird. Okay.
Which was interesting, but it wasn't something that necessarily took root within my practice. Of course, this was written in, the early 90s, so, who knows?
Yeah, that's
could have just been called Quantum Voodoo. Actually, that could have been the title of it.
Truth.
But it was one of those things I read and then, promptly put on my bookshelf and then never read a second time. But it was interesting, and I'm sure there were ideas of it. There were concepts that about co-location of matter and things like that, movement of things over, correspondence lines and things like that. There was some stuff that was definitely useful and went on to influence Carrion in probably no small way. Yeah. But, yeah, I read voraciously back then. Anything I could get my hands on. But the cool thing about being a pagan at Michigan State is there was an organization, great student-run organization called the Green Spiral, which was a lot of fun, and got to do a few rituals that way. And I met up with a guy there who started me down the path of they were trying to start a OTO lodge at the time. I'm not going to sit here and name drop, but it was an eye-opening experience where I learned that I'm not exactly right for a hierarchical type organization. Yeah. It's just not me. I understand that with learning of occult, of secrets, of things that are kept, behind lock and key, there's a certain degree of discipline, and yes, you need to perform a certain amount of servitude in order to understand that you're worthy of these secrets and so forth. But you know what? That's not how I magic. I'm very intuitive. It comes, through the ether down to me and then out through my fingertips or what have you. And it's just, I'm not down for that, being somebody's magic slave for a period of time in order to get, whatever secrets. I've read too many vampire books to know that, it's like, sorry, dude, there is no, the only light at the end of this tunnel is a freight train. Okay, that's, anyway, enough about that.
Well, no, that's kind of what I was getting at. So, in your time there, learning a little bit about yourself and things like that, what would you say your spiritual practice looked like then compared to now? Are they similar? Are they different? How are they different?
Well, I'd say that they're in virtually no way similar. Other than, well, I should take that back. I was more of a daily practitioner type person. I was more a person who was, doing the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram every day as a form of centering. I was somebody who was, drawing the quarters as part of a normal. That was me back then. I don't do that now. But what I did find was my affinity for working with spirits is something that has carried forward throughout all of my practice. So I'd say it's similar. The theory is the same, but the practice is different.
Gotcha. Okay. So you say you work with spirits a lot.
Yes.
So I already obviously know all of this,
sure.
But for the folks at home, you want to kind of lay out like what your spiritual path kind of is now in generals. You don't have to get super specific.
Yeah, sure. I am not a big fan of labels.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times they're counterproductive. But I practice what I term necromancy, which is just communication with spirits, not mediumship, but actually doing magical work with spiritual entities. And this can come in all kinds of forms. This can be the spirits of the dead. This can be extra-dimensional spirits. This can be fey entities. This can be, there's just so many different...
The spirit of the fuse box in our home.
Right. Well, that's the thing is, physical objects have spirits.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So sometimes you just got to talk to them.
Yeah.
And that's... So that's really... necromancy really does mean the dead, right?
Right.
And that's my main focus is... because death is a form of transition. It really is the spiritual package that transition is wrapped up in, right? And that's how humans conceive of the idea of moving from one place to another is through this concept of death. Because we are mortal, that is the final end of a thing, and then the progression into another thing. So that's how we process that. But really, necromancy doesn't really wrap it up entirely. I like that term because it's pretty cool sounding. But that's my main focus, working with spirits of the dead. But
so tell me, are the dead good conversationalists?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends on what state they're in, as far as whether or not they're able to even... Okay, let's put it this way. When a spirit is disembodied, it either in my experiences again, it either retains a sense of its personality,
okay,
and a sense of its cognition, mm-hmm. or in some cases, emotions, or in most cases, any kind of unresolved issues will be more to the forefront than the personality or the sense of history or the sense of who the person was in life.
I gotcha.
So if you've got a situation where there is a spiritual entity that is primarily affixed on rage or vengeance or things like that, it's really difficult to have much of a conversation with them because they're just pissed off. So
it's like trying to talk down the guy at the grocery store.
It's kind of the same kind of deal.
Yeah.
But that's but as far as religious practice recently, just in the past few years, I've gone from being more of a, I guess, just eclectic catch-all kind of dude to going in the direction of being devoted to a deity.
Okay.
And that deity is Hel from
right.
the Norse pantheon, for those that are familiar with her. But that's the my principles are Odin and Hel.
Gotcha.
And I'm not a very good devotee, I guess. I wouldn't call myself a deep spiritual practitioner from that regard. I do the holidays, I do the the devotion, the sacrifice.
You do the service.
The bloods and whatnot, but it's not like I have given my life over. My relationship with deity is very different from a lot of people's, and I think this is very fitting with the Norse philosophical practice, in that as we are not, there's a saying in the Viking community, a Viking bows to no one.
Okay.
So this is not a situation of servitude. This is a situation of partnership and honor and mutual respect.
I see.
So, I feel that Hel is considerably more caring, I guess, than Odin is. I know that's going to sound really weird.
No, I get it. She's feminine, so there's some kind of motherhood there, even if it's not a traditional motherhood.
But, Odin, of course, is the All-Father, and Odin created, with help of his brothers, did create mankind.
Yes.
Or humanity, I should say.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, in my assertion, he seems to have been just largely disappointed with us ever since. So, you're never going to, it's not like in some religions where, if you devote yourself to me, you will be forgiven or you will be put on this path of righteousness or what have you. It's just like, well, I have this wisdom. You can either go with it or not, and fuck off, man. You got your choices to make.
Right.
And Odin doesn't give you many chances. It's just like, I got a thing. You can either key into that thing, or I guess my services are not needed here. And then he's going to go on to somebody who might listen. So that's I tend to be very I wouldn't say hypervigilant, but I am listening. Right. I am listening when the Allfather speaks. I gotcha. And that's my relationship with deity.
Gotcha. All right. So we've talked about your path. We've talked about the books you've written and how those experiences mesh into those beliefs. So tell me a little bit about your Norse services for people at home that have not attended a Norse service, what that kind of looks like, and what kind of values you would teach. Sure.
So I have a pretty standard formula that I follow for my Norse service. We spend some time talking about Old Norse cultural practices. Like specifically, we hold the service once a month, and every month I talk about what the month is on we use the old Icelandic calendar because I feel that, just getting down to brass tacks, the culture of Iceland is probably more accurate to the old Viking practices than the Norse practice of, even though Norway is the namesake for the Norse people. But the fact of the matter is, Iceland is more remote, and really the Eddas were discovered in Iceland. So it's kind of archaeologically more accurate to say Iceland is probably closer.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I'm not a Norse scholar by any stretch of the imagination, but from what I've read and what I understand this to be true. So we talk about I go through one of the 9 noble virtues in each of the services, and we just kind of talk about what that virtue means in ancient times, what that virtue means today, and how we can honor the gods by practicing these 9 virtues.
I see. That makes sense. And it's a great service. And people, do feel better after coming, for sure. I've seen, at least in my experience. And you've got a small but loyal following.
Yeah, absolutely. There aren't a lot of us, but we are true believers, as it were.
Yeah. Well, that was another thing I wanted to talk about. Is we talk a lot about kind of like people want to talk about being a member of the Asatru religion, but at the same time, there's a sect of Asatru that are quite white supremacist.
Yep.
And I noticed you did not identify yourself as someone who is a follower of the Asatru religion. Nope. So is that why?
Yeah, I separate myself from that particular label simply because of its association with white supremacy. Asatru in Old Norse means the folk or the people, and that is a very common term in white supremacy. When they talk about the folk, they mean the white folk. Yeah. But unfortunately, the Asatru label came about in the late 1960s, early 1970s, and it did not have very noble origin. Now, there are a lot of very good and noble Asatru practitioners. I have no doubt of that. However, there is enough of a tarnish on the label itself where I just don't connect myself to it. I connect myself to a lot of the teachings. I think that you can glean a lot from certain just same could be said of all religions. So you can find in religious documents, you can find support for all manner of horrible things that humans do to one another. It's been done forever.
And with all religions.
With every religion.
Yeah.
But the thing that has been keyed into, I think, mainly with Asatru is the adherence to the 9 charges, which are separate from the 9 noble virtues. The charges are saying these are things that the noble virtues are, these are values that you must have in order to consider yourself to be a person of the old ways. Whereas the charges are specifically, these are things you must do. These are actions. And one of those is very specifically valuing one's own people over other people. That's that spells it out very clearly. It's one of the 9 charges. Value your kin over those of others. So it's basically just a cry of nationalism. And it's not something I support. I mean, I think, people are people, and we all are on this rock spinning around in the galaxy, and we all need to take care of each other. But now the idea of taking care of your family, your personal tribe, over another is not a terrible idea, but when you extend that out into only people that look like me deserve my any kind of my generosity, that is not something I get down with in any way.
Yeah, I can see that. So also I wanted to talk a little bit about your experiences as a presenter. You've presented in a lot of different spaces. You've presented at Convocation, of course, at the Detroit Folk Magic and Conjure Fest.
Guilty.
And did we do Pagan Pride Day that one time?
We might have. I don't remember if we actually presented something there, or if we were just there as
arm candy.
Well, yeah, I'm the arm candy.
Yeah, okay.
But right. I know we were there one year for. For PPT. We've not. Yeah, I don't think we've ever presented anything there.
Yeah. So, in those experiences when you've been presenting, people present things in a lot of different ways, and I've noticed definitely during your rituals, there's a very specific pattern that you follow, and because it's like Wicca, but not. It's so. Where did you come about your ritual practice? How did you come into that?
It's jazz, baby. It's organic fusion. It's just things pop into my head. I get ideas from places. Some of them take root. Some of them go. I'm not a traditionalist. I'm not a what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not a guy who practices like any kind of fundamentalist religion. I'm not someone who says this is the way things are and this is the way they have to be, and if not, you're evil. Gotcha. But and some of that is the fact that I have not been indoctrinated into the Norse practice specifically. I found this through collective practice, not through, I didn't, go study with, a satyr or whatnot. I didn't study under a specific, religious mentor. I read the books, I learned the things, I found resonance, and I went forward. And that's how it's been since day one. I've never been whole cloth on any particular spiritual journey. And, I guess if people take umbrage to that, then that's their problem, not mine.
I suppose so, because, religion, we typically accept religion to help ourselves deal with issues and problems and, help ourselves stay on a path that we feel is appropriate to us, right?
Yeah.
So I can see where you're coming from there.
But, it's also about respect, right?
Right.
Like I said, I used to be a person who was very much into the spiritual practice of shamanism, right?
Right.
And, we used to have a thing back in the 1990s that we used to call eclectic.
Yep.
we don't use that term too much anymore, but we used to refer to ourselves as eclectic practitioners.
Yes.
So, and eclectic for those kids at home that maybe haven't heard this term before, it just basically means a hodgepodge. You just throw everything in a bucket, swish it around for a while, see what pops up. But the sad fact of the matter is a lot of these folks who were eclectic practitioners were people who did, kind of take advantage of a lot of different cultural practices that maybe they don't have any right to. And I found a lot of that now there are absolutely wonderful post-tribal shamans out there. I have no doubt. I am personally acquainted with a number of them. But back in the day, I'm talking back in the day, there were a number of people who were not quite so respectful and not quite so honorable about their intentions towards the what is essentially the theft of this spiritual practice.
So we're talking cultural appropriation.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to use that term, but yeah.
It's a thing.
We didn't even have a word for it back then. It was just, hey, you're being shitty. So the idea that, the only way I felt even kind of good about it was, oh, hey, I have, X amount of Native American ancestry, so I guess I'm in the club. But, that's not cool either.
Right.
So I walked away from that. But since then, I have discovered that there is actually a path of shamanism that is practiced by the Old Norse people. So I've been exploring that a little more. So it's a thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. That actually sounds really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. But that is definitely, that's where my, not that everything comes down to, ethnocentrism, but that's where my bloodline follows back to. So right. That's where I feel most comfortable with saying, yeah, this is the thing that I am. But, I know I'm way over our time, but the thing that I really, I come from an Appalachian background.
Oh, really?
We haven't talked about that.
Yeah, no, we haven't.
I mean Dee and I have talked about it, but we haven't talked about this on the show.
Right.
But
I'm wearing my journalist hat right now.
That's the
journalist. Yep.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about a time when you were a child and anyway?
Yep.
No. But the we didn't even have words for these things. They were just things that Granny did, and that was just that. And we were never as far as Christian per se, we were never in that term. When people from the Appalachians say somebody's religious, they specifically mean they're Christian.
Right.
Or they're, a practitioner of the Christian faith and in good standing. That's when a person's religious. But, there are all kinds of little spiritual practices that are done without even saying, and you just don't even, just like, leaving a fork a certain way in a drawer.
Yep.
That's separate from the rest of them. It's just they call it luck charms. They call it, all kinds of different words for it. But there were these little things, and these things were never taught to me. These were just things that I observed from being around my grandma.
I see.
So it's just like I've always had this connection to my ancestry in the hills. And that's, unfortunately, well, I mean, depending on how you look at it, fortunately or unfortunately, she's probably a lot more forthcoming with information now that she's on the other side than she would definitely ever was when she was alive. Yeah. But, the conversation's a little more free. And she's always around. I hear from her every so often, particularly when I'm cooking, because, Granny liked to cook. That was her whole thing was, being a woman from Kentucky, cooking was very important to her.
I can imagine.
when I'm making things that are particularly things that like fried chicken or cornbread, or things that were in that particular group of things that were in that flavor palette.
Yeah.
I'll hear little whispers about like, you need to put a little blah 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 in there. Anyway,
no, I get it. I get it. No.
Yeah, she had a very particular voice.
Yeah.
But that's that I find myself being drawn more and more to the hill magics, which there's a whole history on that. I would not be able to do it justice, but basically, there's folk that say that that's, that a lot of the hill magics is appropriation of hoodoo. There are folks that say that it's a organic fusion of Celtic magic or Celtic spiritual practices with native first people folk magics with African spiritual practices. And I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but I think it is definitely an organic practice. And I know there's a lot of very educated people on the topic who would definitely, who are not in the good old boys club that who are not defending it because of the color of their skin necessarily. So there's definitely people that I've read material from that say that this is not necessarily harmful cultural practice. So that's definitely something I've been interested in, but not taken to in the form of organized study.
Yes. So one last thing, or two more things, I think. We're going to try to come in at about an hour.
Oh, okay. Sweet.
So one thing I wanted to ask you is, what was your favorite dish that your grandmother made?
My favorite dish that my grandma made, this isn't even a dish, but far and away, no question, no comment, no differing of opinion, it's fried apple pie.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it, beginning and end. She was fantastic with, like I said, with the fried chicken, with the cornbread, with the beans. Oh Lord, the green beans.
Yeah.
I missed that. But fried apple pie.
All right.
That was which to northern folks is it's what you might call a fried apple turnover, which is actually very similar to an empanada.
Right.
But it's not crispy fried. It's made from more of a kind of a sticky dough.
Yeah.
And I can't make them. I can't make them to save my life. Dee's made them, and they're good.
Yeah.
But there's a certain element of the human spirit that goes into a dish, and and just like with everything, if you are a different person, you are not going to get that exactly the same. It may be great, but it's not going to be the same.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. So I'm going to hit you with something. You're not going to be ready for it, and you're going to look at me funny, and I know it now.
All right.
Hit these folks at home with a 2-minute inspirational speech.
Okay.
Give or take here.
I'm going to give, and then I'm going to take. All right. So I think the key to any spiritual practice is authenticity. Just go out there, be who you are at your most core self. It's not about pleasing people. It's not about, adhering to a path that someone else has set out for you. It's about looking in, understanding who you are and where you need to go, and doing that thing and living that truest self. And as long as you are following a good ideal of how to treat others, and you are being authentic to who you are as a person, I think that you really can't do wrong with that.
All right. Well, thank you.
I know it's short, but I am too.
Well, hey, we all are in some way or shape or form. So let me ask then about the classes that we teach.
Yeah.
I don't know that people know this, but I'll
we
go
teach
ahead.
Classes.
We do teach classes at the temple. Our next one is coming up, as a matter of fact, on Wednesday, and it will be about divination for dummies.
Divination for dummies.
That's right. So I know how I came up with the ideas that I put on that list.
Yeah.
But talk me through your process of how you figure out what it is you think that you might be qualified to teach, because I like I said, I know kind of what I go through and what my process is and things like that. But like, do you look at books? Do you have reference materials? Do you just ask your spiritual guides what it is that's needed? How do you address that?
You're going to be real disappointed with this. I don't have a process.
Your process is throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks?
Like I said, I am an intuitive.
Right.
So for me, the idea will come. I know that I've got a class that I need to present on. If it's a class that has already been determined by my partner, i.e. D, then I will see where I can take a look at the topic as a whole, and I can see where I can fill in the cracks or develop a structure unto itself for what I know about that material. I always start from what my base knowledge is. And not to blow my own horn, but I know a lot about a lot of things.
Yes.
So it's not hard to come up with at least an understanding. Now, if you were to ask me about, what's geomancy?
Yeah.
No, I don't know much about that. I'd have to do a considerable amount of research for that one.
Yep.
It's like, hey, talk to me about Chinese alchemy. I'm like, couldn't you have asked about Greek or Arabic alchemy? Chinese alchemy? No, man. I know it's got wood as an element. I mean, that's what I know.
Got wood?
But it's got wood for sure. But that's my whole thing is I have, for those folk that are familiar with a Dungeons & Dragons analogy,
I got you.
I'm a bit of a bard. I am a jack of all trades, a master of none.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's a second half to that saying.
Yeah.
But I can't remember it.
Okay.
It's just basically jack of all trades, master of none. It's something better to be I don't know. So it's better to know a lot about a lot. It's better to know some about a lot of stuff than it is to only know a lot about one thing.
Right. Got it. Yes.
So that's it.
Yeah. So,
So then once I've figured out where the deficiencies are, where the things that I need to understand more about, and provided I can't lean on my partner, because that's really what partnership is about picking up the slack for the other and then providing support when you can.
all right.
Then when neither of us really have an answer to it, I do research. And then, there's a lot of great, written accounts of, great literary materials out there. Not literary, but, reference materials for occult type topics.
And we have a fantastic number of people in our community that we lean on, and they lean on us just the same.
Absolutely.
So that does help too, not to bring myself into it. I've been trying, like I said, real hard to put on this little journalism hat.
So there's this thing that you might not be familiar with, and it's kind of I'm kind of giving away the store here.
Okay.
It's a secret that
to everybody.
It's a secret to everybody. A lot of people aren't really familiar with it, but there's this resource called Google.
No.
Yeah, it's on the internet.
What?
You may not be familiar with it.
Yeah, okay.
It's kind of new. So, you can't find all of the answers using the Googles, but you can certainly get moving in a direction of finding an answer.
Right.
So, and there's a lot of really fantastic. I actually have a number of different. I'm going to use an old term, listserv that I'm attached to that do send out digest emails about this is a PDF on this subject that you were inquiring about, and just by putting the search in and walking away, the bot will work on that continuously until it finds a thing, and then like 3 weeks later, hey, here's a thing about Sumerian alchemy. It's like cool,
That's
awesome.
amazing.
I'll read that later.
Yeah.
You know what? I save it and put it into a file, and then I may read it at some point if I remember that I looked that.
Usually
thing up.
when we're panicking and can't.
But it's
figure
like,
out
oh
how
hey,
to
what do I
teach
do?
class.
So that's that you asked about a process. That's my process. Just
Gotcha.
kind of spitball it.
Yeah. And one thing that I've not mentioned about Steve here is that he does have he is. I'd mentioned that you're a nurse, but he does have some advanced degrees and things like that. So Steve really adds a lot of science and credence to my whimsy, and I think I think that's very important. In a relationship, of course, it's always important to try to maintain some sort of balance of some kind. And but like I feel like like you usually kind of are more into the hard sciences things. I may go and find the scholarly article that we use, but you'll be the one that points out the points in it that we can actually tie to.
Just kind of piggybacking on to something I said earlier. I don't know how you piggyback on yourself, but it's like I'm climbing my own body in order to get up on top of this shelf. But in the olden days, back in the early 90s,
before the Goog,
we used to. Well, like I said, I had mentioned I was involved in the high magic, ritual magic, the Western occult tradition, as they used to refer to it. And one of the big things that was really, really huge in the Western occult tradition was knowledge of science.
Yeah.
So, like, in a lot of modern occult traditions, it's just like, I don't want to deride anybody's beliefs or anything like that, but there's a very different approach to sensing the physical reality of the universe by way of understanding physical sciences versus just using your intuition and following your vibes. You know what I mean? It's just a very different way of approach. And not that either one is necessarily wrong per se. I'm definitely more on the science side of things. And that's why even today a lot of my practice is laced by skepticism, because I need some kind of objective evidence. I need a proof of some kind.
Right. Which doesn't have to come in the form of scientific method, but you at least need to see some evidence of something.
For sure.
Right. I gotcha.
But that's where my background is in. And then, being a person who has studied science, the biological sciences pretty extensively. So it's just something that I have an understanding of and I have a background in, so I can lend that to our soup.
Yes. And I think I'm going to go ahead and end it off here. But I did want to thank you for joining me here.
I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
In our bedroom, acting like we're not actually talking to one another. And it was important, I felt, to do this sort of interview and to talk to somebody that's like hyper local to me.
It's not much. You can't get much more local
than your husband, or your
somebody you live
of some
with.
Kind, somebody you live with. So like it was important to me to kind of hit the hyper local as well, because we can talk to the Jason Mankeys of the world, and we can talk to the the Liz Williamses of the world and things like that. But truth be told, the folks that in most cases, if you're going to be coming to the Pagan Temple, or coming to Pagan Pathways Temple specifically, the folks you're going to be seeing are going to be the Steves. They're going to be seeing the Steves, the Dees, the Cynthia Days, the Tanyas. Jack Mercer. I don't know that he's actually ever done a class at PPT. I feel like he has, but I don't think that's accurate. But these are the people that you're probably going to see more out in the community. Mm-hmm. But we do have some kind of larger names lined up in the coming weeks. That I'm
cool. Larger than Steve Dunne. That's
hard
to believe.
Dunne. I know it's kind of hard to believe, right?
Such hubris.
But yeah, so I wanted to kind of just check in and just kind of help people explore you and explore in turn all kinds of things that that are available to the community.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate being featured as an exploration area.
Well, thank you. And now I'm going to go explore my... Oh, wait. No, I can't say that out loud.
I'm available for exploration to any folks that are interested. Just hit me up on Facebook. I love to talk about different... If time permits. If I'm busy or what have you, yes, I'm definitely going to say, hey, let me get back to you later. And you may have to remind me because also ADHD. Yep. So... but the fact is, I'm always in my heart willing to help people talk through matters of a spiritual nature or an occult nature. I'm super big on occult stuff. You know, like the weirder the better. So I love to hear people's stories and people's questions. And I'm by no means an expert, but I am definitely down to help you think it through. You know, think through the process. Sometimes it's the rubber duck method used in IT. Explain a topic to a person, and by way of explaining it, then you figure it out yourself, in which the person is just a sounding board.
Right.
So, anyway.
Yeah. And, Steve usually does most of our corresponding because I like talking to people, but after working in a call center for years and years and years, I kind of have a block about it. So, good times. Which is funny because I can talk to people all damn day on this podcast. You've seen me.
Yes.
All the time. So really appreciate y'all joining us for Growing in the Old Ways. Tune in next week for another exciting guest. We'll let you know who that is once we know who that is, because we are currently doing all of our scheduling. So thank you again, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
This episode of PPT Presents is brought to you by Pagan Pathways Temple. Pagan Pathways Temple is a 501c3 out of beautiful Madison Heights, Michigan. We offer classes, community outreach, ritual space, and a library available to our members. To find out more or to become a member, please go to paganpathwaystemple.org or patron.com/Pagan Pathways Temple. Pagan Pathways Temple, growing in the old ways where all paths are open.
Growing the Old Ways with is brought to you by TechWitch Detroit. TechWitch Detroit is a mobile IT service who will come to you when you need them. We offer remote services, hands-on services, and consultation services so that you don't have to spend your valuable time Googling computer headaches. Please visit us on the web at techwitchdetroit.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/TheTechWitch. TechWitch Detroit, we can help.